Who knew? Who knew that the publishing industry was so dramatic? My name is Taylor Rose, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about everything reading and writing. Publishing is a huge industry that is unfortunately also very confusing for people who aren't in the know, so to speak. A few entities have stepped forward to try and disrupt the system. Most recently, you've probably heard of Paul Castle. He's a blind gay creator who writes children's book along with making his social media content with his husband Matthew. Most of their channels go by Matthew and Paul. That has been quite the journey. So you can see here, Biden Martin, an author on social media, kind of outlined exactly what went down, mainly between him and Paul Castle. In 2024, June, Paul came online and said that his book was banned because a bookstore canceled their order from him. In that video, he did read their email, which just said, hey, an ex-employee ordered these. It's actually against our policy to have this kind of order. Your book's really cute. Sorry for this mix-up. Two things. The email said someone's name, Tanya. And so you can see here, Biden had called them out because their followers, Matthew and Paul now have at least 4 million subscribers on each platform. These 4 million followers went through TikTok and Instagram and found anyone in the bookish sphere named Tanya and started harassing them. So Biden kind of called them out on it like, hey, your followers are harassing this poor woman. Most of the vitriol was aimed at a Tanya in Canada, who is a Black woman who runs a bookstore focused on uplifting marginalized voices. You can guess that's probably not who it was. After Biden called him out, Paul finally made this video saying, hey, stop harassing Tanyas on the internet, guys. They kind of went back to their normal content, so to speak, but some people have come out and stated hey, we tried to order their books for our bookstore and they want us to order a minimum 50 copies, which, I don't run a bookstore. You probably don't either. At first glance, you're probably like, that doesn't sound too crazy, but a lot of these people have come out who run small bookstores and they say they don't even buy 5 copies for extremely popular books, like TikTok viral books that everybody's trying to buy, Sarah J. Maas, whoever, they don't even buy more than a handful of copies for those books. So being asked to carry 50 copies of a children's book, especially, is a really big ask. So I imagine that's probably what the bookstore was talking about when they meant against our policy. They probably have a limit on the number of copies of a single book that an employee can order, and this employee just didn't pay attention, I guess. A few weeks after this, Paul came back onto TikTok and started saying that he was being review bombed, which a review bomb is when people go and give false reviews for a book, or, it can happen to movies or anything really. Basically, everyone was giving 1-star reviews despite never having read this book or seen this movie or been to this business. So, Biden pointed out at the time the book had thousands of 5-star reviews and nothing in between, and then a handful of 1-star. And these 1-star reviews were also being hidden by Amazon because they were by anonymous new accounts, essentially, which, suspicious. So you can see here, Biden had made this post about pity marketing, which is when you go on camera and cry to get people to buy your book or use your service. Like all those videos about my poor grandpa making his cat slippers, and then it's like an AI video. That's pity marketing, except these are real people. In February of this year, I guess, I don't know what this is referring to, but a video came out that was using pity marketing. So he starts talking about pity marketing, and Paul stitched him and called him out, essentially accusing Biden of talking about him. And he kind of mentioned them but not by name. And he gave multiple other examples. So you can go on his channel and scroll back and find this video. Because Paul stitched him, calling him out, all the fans went now to harass Biden after harassing Tanya. I just think like, it's a pattern. It's a pattern that they are kind of weaponizing their fans to beat down on people who speak anything not positive. Biden says that he reached out to Paul via TikTok to kind of like sort out the situation. Essentially, Paul refused to make a public statement saying leave Biden alone, and they just decided to ignore it and move on. Now we're back to June of this year. So 12 months after the first book banning, we get to this new video from Paul where he is basically saying he had a deal with a bookstore for them to carry his books, but they wanted him to change the title, which I'm not saying it can't happen, but the general consensus on the internet is that is extremely rare, not likely to happen. Like a bookstore would never ask you, hey, we'll carry your book if you change the title. Like that's absurd, really. Personally, I think he realized his title is a little confusing. The book in question is Pingrooms, which I find hard to say. Like, I get it, penguin grooms, that's cute, but it's a children's book. Having something easier to understand across like the spectrum of the population, I mean, I think that was probably a smart move on their part, renaming it. After they renamed the book and ordered, apparently, thousands of copies of this book, the bookstore backed out, which I'm not saying that's not possible, but why wasn't there a contract in place? Like, there are tons and tons of comments on threads talking, like, asking, like, why wasn't there a contract? Like, you don't make business decisions like this on this scale without having a written agreement. This is when a lot of people started weighing in again because something didn't add up. My old videos started entering the algorithm again, and I was tagged, mentioned, DM'd, and emailed ad nauseum. So poor Biden is being dragged, kicking and screaming back into this fiasco. And he made a response to this, along with tons of other authors. Made posts, made videos, saying that, like, this doesn't make any sense. Because in his second video, Paul is saying that he found out after ordering these thousands of books, after having a deal with a bookstore, that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I have to go through this website that every bookstore in America uses, essentially. Shocker. So that program, that website is Ingram. It has multiple branches. Ingram Spark is what indie authors use to self-publish their own books. So it's kind of like a print-on-demand system. You can take your manuscript, go, upload it, and like you're ready to go. Bookstores can then order your book through Ingram. Paul, in his video, was saying, Ingram's telling me I need 10 books. And of course, everyone's really confused because indie authors there's no limit. You can do whatever you want on Ingram Spark. Well, it comes out that he's not talking about Ingram Spark. He's talking about Ingram Wholesale, which does not take authors, essentially. Like, what it boils down to is that Ingram Wholesale does not take authors. They take publishers. And so he is kind of conflating his identity as the author and like the entity of his publisher. He is essentially created, like, he's his own publisher, right? Hence all these books in the background. You could equate it to a vanity press, basically. Ingram Wholesale does have that requirement. Because they're taking publishers, you do need to have 10 books because you're a publisher who is processing other people's work to then publish it. On threads, Emily at Ingram Spark chimed in. So she works at Ingram Spark, which is like the indie publishing branch of Ingram. And she said, so I talked to some folks at Ingram Wholesale. Matthew and Paul contacted them in 2024 and were turned down. Then with some referrals to Spark or different publishers. Has not contacted us since, and as far as they knew, no exception was being made because the associated fees would drown them. So pretty much they've been sitting on stock and we're just wanting to sell through Ingram while putting pressure on a big company, not to mention charging other authors to publish their books. So what she's referring to is, in a video that is now deleted, Paul posted screenshots of text messages saying, Ingram's giving us an exception. Oh my gosh, they called back. I can't believe this. And she's basically like, I talked to the guys across the hall and that didn't go down. Like, so of course Paul deletes this video because it's fake. She continues, I knew something was not right with their last video because nobody would be working on a weekend to call them. Instead, our manager at Ingram Spark called Matthew, but he wasn't interested in our services. So she said she was sorry that no one had reached out and would contact Wholesale to follow up. And even if they were working on the weekend, Wholesale does not equal bookstore placement. It's the publisher's job to market and sell the book, not Ingram's. They just do warehousing and fulfillment. And I guarantee Matthew and Paul did not realize that, right? So after deleting their video saying that Ingram made an exception, Paul posts a video responding to someone's comment. Someone made a comment like, oh my gosh, you should help other authors get published. And they responded like, whoa, that's such a great idea. I've never thought of that before. And solicited manuscripts from their viewers for children's books. And people are like, what? No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're signing your rights away to someone who clearly doesn't know how the publishing industry works. Like, that would be like me asking you, hey, give me your manuscript and I'll publish it for you. I don't know what I'm doing. They don't know what they're doing either. So a lot of people had some thoughts about this. Golden Leaf Books said, what I really hope that we are not watching is the start of a new vanity hybrid press. Being a publisher is a huge responsibility. It's people's blood, sweat, tears, and money in your hands. Doing well in publishing requires an in-depth understanding of how the entire industry functions. Disrupting an industry without harming the vulnerable people in it requires understanding, consideration, and actually caring for these groups within the industry. But I'm worried about this because one thing that I consistently see in the videos from the Penguin, right, Pengroom's author is just enough truth and just enough accuracy to sound plausible to anyone who's unfamiliar with the back end of the publishing industry. It's like watching a TV show where the main characters in your industry, there's a reason doctors and lawyers make fun of shows about doctors and lawyers, except this is real life. So it's more like a guy was an actor in a medical drama and is now trying to open a hospital in real life without ever going to medical school. Things that a responsible publishing group would be doing prior to asking for manuscripts: hiring a lawyer with publishing industry experience, taking classes on how the publishing industry works, talking to authors that have been published instead of just aspiring authors to learn about the standard process, hiring an editor. And maybe they have been doing these things clearly behind the scenes because they haven't mentioned it in a video. I have no way of knowing that they haven't, but it really feels like if they did, they ignored some pretty important advice. And while I don't have the reach that they do, more important than talking about what they may or may not be doing wrong this time is raising awareness about things that sound great but are actually red flags in publishing. First and foremost, your publisher should know what a book ban is and what laws might ban your book and have a plan for mitigating any book bans that they run into. They should not think that a store declining a book with an absurd stocking requirements is a book ban. They should not be burning bridges with bookstores by misrepresenting how distribution works. So again, they're referencing the minimum order. Some people have said it was 100, some people have said it was 50. Either way, that's an egregious number of books for one bookstore to buy. Your publisher should have books on shelves in multiple bookstores, and ideally in big box stores like Barnes & Noble's, Target, and yes, even Amazon. Maybe especially Amazon, but y'all know who I am as a person, and I'm giving myself a gold star for saying their name at all. If they have continually told a story about how they struggle to get books on shelves at bookstores and aren't touting their success and highlighting the indie bookstores that do carry them well, I have questions, and you should too. Like, why would I trust my precious baby of a manuscript to a publisher whose brand is like 90% not getting books in bookstores? I'm just saying, I agree, Golden Leaf Books, like, I would not trust them. Do they seem like really nice people? Yes. I used to watch their content all the time. I thought they're so cute. I love Mr. Maple, but I hope people aren't falling for this. Why aren't you building your relationships with the bookstores by promoting all the places your books are sold? Because the whole point of working with a publisher is that they do the one thing this author has complained about not being able to do. They get your book stocked at both the major distro Ingram and in stores like Barnes & Noble's and indie bookstores. And most business people will tell you that business getting done is largely about knowing people, talking to people, having relationships with the people who are able to do things. Bullying the people you want to do business with is not typically good business strategy, not even when you do it with a little Darvo spice. So Darvo stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It's like a gaslighting. technique, basically. And it really does seem like they are looking to use their large following to bully their way into publishing at a level they didn't earn because they don't have the background understanding necessary to know that there's a reason they aren't allowed to do what they're trying to do the way that they're trying to do it. It will financially destroy them and it will take others down with them. Because distribution of already printed stock is expensive, you have to make it up in volume. And listen, I hope I'm wrong. The publishing industry is busted, there are too many middlemen, and indie authors deserve better. Maybe they've dreamed up a better model for publishing. The industry is still running on an infrastructure backbone from the 80s, literally, and the monopolies aren't good for any of us. But the number one sign that I'm right and rightfully disappointed will be if they try to charge the authors up front, and number two will be making them sell to bookstores. Charging authors for things like editing, cover art, printing the book up front, and then making the authors do direct sales and marketing to bookstores, that isn't disruption. It's a page out of the publishing scam playbook, and it's decades old. This is the third and hopefully final post. Post 1 talked about the video last year claiming that the book had been banned. It wasn't. Post 2 talked about the witch hunt that resulted from that video and the follow-ups and why that was irresponsible, harmful, and how they did not take enough accountability or learn. So again, this is about all the attacks on poor Tanya. And this was about them saying a book ban is one bookstore not wanting to carry your book. Post 3 talked about how he's now starting a publishing house as a disruptor and how there's a good chance that could end up hurting people, right? And Sierra had a good point here. I heard a quote once that I think about almost every day. Everything sounds like a conspiracy when you don't know how anything works. This gives less disrupt the industry and more, I don't know what any of this is, right? We see stuff like that all the time with vaccine misinformation, nutrition misinformation, anything you can think of. There's someone who doesn't know anything about it and is convinced they do and then tries to get people on their side. Absolutely crazy that we are in the year 2025 with Google. So after that first post by Emily, Matthew and Paul reblogged her on Threads with what I thought, and this is actually the point at which I no longer was supporting them. Even reading all that other stuff, I was like, you know, they're just such good people. They seem so nice, and I'm sure they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. This is the post that changed that for me. They reposted Emily's post and said, not sure why Emily's making things up about us. Super disheartening. She's from the indie side of Ingram. We're working with our contacts on the wholesale side right now. We previously had a nice chat with Emily, but she's now making some pretty unprofessional claims about us and jumping to strange conclusions. I would hate for there to be blood, Emily. What? That is a threat. That is a threat. You have 4 million followers on Threads alone. I think it's 3 on Threads, 4 on TikTok, whatever. 4 million followers. This poor girl has 800, and all she did was say, hey, I talked to my coworkers and they said no exceptions being made. Absolutely insane. And then all their fans were defending this. This is a threat. This is a threat. You cannot gaslight me into thinking this is not a threat. She has 800 followers on Threads. If he never said anything, no one probably would have seen it. Absolutely disgusting. And so poor Emily, y'all, I just woke up from a nap. I sent one email saying I'd send their video to the wholesale team. We work in the same building just down the hall, and I did. And I followed up again with them this morning, and that's what they told me. But misrepresenting the full situation and sending your audience after someone who tried to help you, not cool. Because she had been explaining, like, hey, like the process usually goes like this. You're trying this other way. That you really shouldn't be for where you're at. And luckily, her comment section was full of mostly supporters, marked with Hanem. I wonder why all their fans aren't thinking about why people actually in the industry are speaking out about this. Y'all aren't disrupting anything. You just didn't do the research to figure out how it actually works. Leah Unedited. This is the 3rd time they've had the same situation happen with bookstores and publishers. I don't buy it. Felt bad the first time, not anymore. Madeline Burgett, author. I've been following this story, Emily. I'm sorry you're being wrongfully harassed by the author's fans. Hopefully someone from Ingram Wholesale will issue a public statement soon and set the record straight on what's been going on. I have my suspicions it's all just a publicity stunt, and I hate that you're caught in the middle of it. Matthew and Paul also responded to her other post being like, nobody works on the weekend. Charging other authors to publish their books is a wild claim, Emily. Super disappointed, especially after the lovely email exchanges we were having. We are now connected with some of your helpful colleagues in the wholesale department, and they've been absolutely wonderful to work with. Very excited about the next steps. We will be sure to let you know what happens. And again, on the weekend, question mark, that exception that you deleted the video about? Okay, Emily at Ingram Spark. Hope it works out for you and you're able to support the new authors you're taking on. It takes a lot of work since the publisher is still in charge of bookstore placement. Also, publishers don't charge their authors to take their works. That's called a vanity press. We'd love to know who you're working with on that team, though, since I was the one who made them aware of your video. Also, I'm making a thread about how wholesale works tomorrow, so I hope you read it. A few days after the post and deletion of the post where he said Ingram's making an exception, he finally comes out and admits on his personal channel, so not even the Matthew and Paul one where all this went down first, on his personal channel, he made a video where he's saying, I know this isn't how publishing usually works, and that they're trying to disrupt the system. Okay, so you know you're trying to circumvent the usual channels, and then when it didn't work, you went online and cried about it? Like you are being unfairly targeted, or that it was some sort of a gotcha moment from Ingram? They are twisting the narrative for sympathy, and their followers are buying it because they don't know how publishing works, right? And Emily chimes back in. As someone who works there, they are so old and set in their ways. Trust me, they won't be disrupting anything. A lot of people who aren't drinking the tea are like, this is really suspicious. It's becoming more insidious as time goes on. Allie's Shelf said, I unblocked Matthew and Paul to see the addressing the controversy video, saw this comment, and just immediately blocked them again. Yes, these are the people disrupting the book industry, not any of my mutuals, binderies, or those who talk about actual book banning, or those who advocate for BIPOC, queer, and disabled spaces. Yet these two white cis men who only platform themselves and do absolutely nothing for the book community, they're the disruptors. Don't piss me off. Because someone in their comments on TikTok, I love how you disrupted the norms of the book industry. They haven't done anything yet, guys. Let's keep disrupting. It's a good thing. And this person brings up something that a lot of people have mentioned. They don't talk at all about other children's books writers, other queer children's content. Nothing. Zero. There are other children's books out there, guys. Versus, in my previous video where we talked about Allie Hazelwood deleting her Instagram, she was known. Like, she would share other authors on her page and try and feature, like, BIPOC authors, marginalized voices, etc. They've done none of that. So I don't know. And like, I understand wanting to represent your own brand, but even on their personal channels where it's like them, nothing. Victoria Aveyard chimed in, at risk of being told I don't know what I'm talking about or that I'm an out-of-touch crone. Authors, please protect yourself when deciding who to work with. I know it sucks to hear, but people will take advantage of you and your blind spots. The first way to defend against bad actors is to do your own research, vet potential publishers, check their socials, their history, their experience, and be clear on what you want for yourself and your work so you know which path to walk. This is not the first time publishing professionals will wade in a, that's not how it works, be careful with this person, only to get smacked with accusations of elitism and bullying, but here we are. And, I have not published a book, but in high school, I had an independent study mentorship for 2 years where I worked with a ghostwriter. If you don't know what a ghostwriter is, they write for other people. So the other person gets to publish it with their name. Celebrities do this. Pretty much any book written by a celebrity is going to be written by a ghostwriter. And it kind of depends on how much work they're doing. The person might have like a full outline that they just can't get to the final step. They might just have an idea. But anyways, part of that was I had to research the different publishing models. And it's like, that was 17 years ago. And there was already all this information online about how vanity presses are evil, taking advantage of poor indie authors. So there'll be thousands of dollars in the hole, and this vanity press won't actually do anything for them. And so while this discussion was going on, a lot of people point out that there are already other models trying to disrupt this like really entrenched publishing industry. Chronically Bookish mentions her bindery. So that's a new website. It's kind of like, I've heard it described as like Patreon, but for books. So writers can serialize their work for subscribers. Kind of like, Korean web novels, web comics. And so Victoria comes back and talks more about like what Matthew and Paul are doing. So the thing with Matthew and Paul is they do have an atypical publishing model. The majority of their sales are through TikTok Shop. It's why they're trying to leverage their way into Ingram Wholesale to improve their margins. It's not a sustainable plan long term, and especially not for anyone beyond themselves. Besides that, they admittedly soliciting manuscripts to fill a quota and openly demonstrating how little they know about publishing. Hardly the people to trust with your book. Their model isn't about creating a long-term career in publishing, indie, or trad. They could do so very easily. They could very easily use their expansive following to land a book deal, not to mention press tour and morning shows. That clearly isn't the interest, probably because the TikTok Shop is so profitable and no shame in it. Their shame is in selling through pure engagement bait and not the actual content of the work. I see so many book ads on TikTok that advertise beautifully without audience manipulation. All that aside, deleting legitimate questions from would-be colleagues and borderline threatening an industry professional for calling bullshit, that's nasty work. So a lot of people are going into Matthew and Paul's comments on these videos and saying, hey, it actually works this way. Hey, like tip here. And they're just deleting the comments. And a lot of people think that this is really because they don't want to be considered indie authors. Let's talk about the Matthew and Paul thing. It all boils down to them thinking that they are above regular indie authors because they are big influencers. They have a fundamental disrespect for the indie community. This is why they didn't do any research on IndiePub. This is why they weren't in community with other indie children's book authors. And this is why they think they can disrupt the industry. I would have rather they just query and get a trad publishing contract. However, that would actually require real work, and there's a possibility that their influencer status might not get them in the door, as every influencer worth their salt is publishing a book these days. And no, I'm not going to be nice, especially since they decided to bully a woman with not even a quarter of their following and allowing their fan base to attack her. Oh, have I mentioned this is their third time doing this? Right? TC Craven author. I've seen the same situation so many times over the years. Same folks, same tears, and every time I'm like, girl, shut up. K.A. Riley writes, I genuinely cannot imagine what kind of bookstore would expect anyone to change a book's title, then reprint it by the thousands, but honestly, it would be sort of hilarious. Chelsea writes books. I can understand a publisher asking to change a book title because they do that all the time, but definitely not a bookstore, right? All the smut things. Honestly, the title change makes sense if you look at it from a wide distribution standpoint. Kids don't always understand puns, and it's not something that can be easily translated. Having the names is a smart decision either way because it can have sequels and spin-offs. So they changed the book title from Ping Rooms to the names of the actual penguins in the book. So it's like, I agree with this. I think it was smart of them to change the title, but I don't think they changed it for the reason they claim to have changed it, right? And again, this is what gets me. Going through their TikTok comments, they're liking these comments that are so vicious and mean. Like, holy shit, guys. I'm gonna go get her to remove that video. How? Threats? Nope. Hacks. And so a lot of people, agree with me on that. Like, that post was egregious. And they did end up deleting it, but screenshots live forever. Anita Moreno's writes, really sums up the situation. When reaching out to Ingram Wholesale, they were told they didn't qualify for that option to distribute high volumes of books as a publisher. They didn't want to do Ingram Spark as an indie author. They misrepresented the situation as being homophobic, when in reality, it was just a company referring to their own rules. There's no guarantee to be placed in bookstores for anyone, so Paul's books are not banned, nor is he being rejected for homophobic reasons. He just didn't meet the requirements. I am laughing. This person commented on their TikTok, are they haters or are they calling out your behavior and actions and you're uncomfortable with it? Because in this video, after people started, talking about them, they made this video saying nice things about my haters. And so they posted people's faces, their names, like their handles, didn't censor anything, and then made weird compliments about them. Like, are we 12? Right? I was laughing. Percy J. Fantasy author. We just need 5 authors to join our team. Every woman who grew up in a southern small town. Hey, I've seen this one. Yeah, it comes off as an MLM. It's Lindsay, but also that's them admitting that they only need 5 titles to fit one of Ingram's distribution requirements for third-party printed books. They have 3 out and 2 more coming. So they're literally admitting to using these 5 people to get what they want. They don't care about your stories. I'm not sure how to read this name, but they talk about it as an indie author. I'm an independent author who sells direct to independent bookstores and readers. I purchase 1,000 to 2,000 units of each title at a time. I spent $16,000 on books last month and had to dissociate from reality for several days after. At most, my indie bookseller partners will purchase 25 copies of my biggest selling title in any one given order. Most of the time, it's 3 of this, 8 of that, and I know that's what their business can support, which is why our minimum order is 5 books of any title at 45% wholesale. I've been doing this since 2021. I know how much room boxes of books take up. This is why I understand the constraints of indie bookshops. For us, time is money, and we don't have the time to pull, package, and ship orders with 2 books. But expecting that any bookstore is going to order 50 plus copies of your singular book is delusional hubris, and really shows a deep lack of understanding of the back end of the industry. I would never purchase 1,000 books. I would never purchase 1,000 units of any book, even my bestsellers, unless I had a clear business plan in place to move them. You can pause here, but Rain and Fire talks about the different publishing models and what exactly is happening with this Ingram thing. Bookish Events Manager had made a few posts talking about like, what? And started getting comments like, got a comment telling us it's not too late to apologize to Paul and warning that our store will suffer the consequences if we don't take the video down. Sorry, are we in a YA dystopia? Is this a curse, a prophecy? Should we consult the ancient runes? We're a bookstore, not a villain in someone's influencer fantasy arc. We posted receipts. The video stays up. Touch grass. Wild. Right. So Read with Cat describes that video where they compliment their haters. Oh, Matthew and Paul just posted a video, normalize being nice to your haters, where they edited in people talking about them and their situations, leaving in those TikTok usernames so their fan bases can run off to bully them. This is complete mean girl behavior. And they like specifically cut the videos to sound worse than they actually were. One of the clips that they included was Biden, which is why he started that whole thread explaining everything, where he basically said, buying one of the Penguin books from Matthew and Paul is like buying a haunted doll because you're buying it for the story behind it. Who knows if the doll's actually haunted, right? Like, who knows if their book is actually good? You're not buying it because you think that like this is such a great children's book. You're buying it because they pulled your heartstrings. And like, I'm not saying I'm immune. Man, you tell me sad animal story, I'm there. I'm there. Bookish Events Manager posted the screenshot of the video that they deleted saying, oh, they're making an exception for us. And they got torn apart by Matthew and Paul followers, right? In the past 2 hours alone, I've been spammed with slurs, sent hate mail, told to eat shit, and smeared with misogynistic filth across platforms. This is what happens when parasocial fandom turns toxic. You don't get to benefit from the power of your platform and wash your hands when that power is used to harm. Booksellers are not your enemies, authors are not your punching bags, and your followers are not your enforcers. Absolutely crazy. I didn't screenshot them, but there were some nasty comments. If it's confirmed that Ingram made a distribution exception here, it sets a dangerous precedent. It rewards a creator who's actively soliciting unagented, unprotected manuscripts from other queer authors with no contracts, no infrastructure, and no safeguards. We should be protecting our queer creators, not validating predatory models built on misinformation and visibility alone. Yep. So finishing up Byron's thread, right? Then suddenly he's publishing other people's books. It's giving, do you think she woke up one day and said, I want to be a lawyer? And then the exception video, and then Ingram Sparks commented. They attacked her. Then he said he was a disruptor. Now everyone from the blogess to Victoria Aveyard to me to Ingram employees to bookstores to Claribel Ortega to authors large and small, industry professionals all over the world, and pretty much everyone else saying, hey, this stinks, are all just clout chasing meanies. Luckily, after the work week resumed, Emily came back and said, wow, just wow, I have no words to say for the support and kindness except thank you. This was not on my bingo card for this year, and I wasn't expecting this to blow up as much as it did. But I'm okay and not in any trouble at work. My safety was their number one priority. It went way above my head, so honestly, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it was so strange to have so much attention on me. The indie community are the true disruptors, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. Which, like, good for them. As far as I can see, Ingram did not make like an official commentary on it, but so there was this creator on TikTok who like went back and like time-stamped all these videos that are still up about the different controversies going on. And on top of that, so while this is all going down, 2 publishers that were largely regarded as like disrupting the industry flushed down the toilet. So the first big one was this publisher based in London that had a crowdfunding model. So they would take a book, get it ready for publication, but then essentially do a GoFundMe for the publication. So like pre-orders kind of is what they were using to fund the publication. So it was called Unbound. For some background, the company was founded by John Mitchinson, Director of Research for the British television panel game Chi, Justin Pollard, historian and Chi researcher who stepped back in 2014, and author Dan Kieran, who left in 2022. So it was founded in 2010, but this year January 2025, the company went into administration, leaving many of its authors owed tens of thousands of pounds in royalties they'd earned. Mitchinson and new CEO Arkna Sharma bought the company later that month, promising to honor all projects and contracts. The same guy still owns this company, essentially. However, he did leave shortly after that, and in May, Sharma said that the new company, Boundless, will not pay existing authors what they are due unless or until the company survives and thrives, in which case they will still only make goodwill payments. So that's when this really blew up, because they had promised, like, we will still pay the authors when they were reborn into Boundless. And then they basically just said, screw y'all. We got what we wanted from you. The Times published an article on this in March. Screenshots here. Some highlights, though. One of its authors, Steve Goodwin, said this week he was owed about 10,000 pounds in royalties for his work, 20 Goto 10, on the history of retro computers and video games, which was published in late 2023. Goodwin said he had not been paid at all through the whole of last year, despite the book having sold thousands of copies. Mitchinson said at the time that he was deeply sorry for the distress and anxiety the delay in payments has caused, adding that it had been the most difficult period in our 14-year history. And then, most suspiciously, it is also reported to have spent more than £1 million developing a machine learning tool, which was supposed to assess someone's social media networks to estimate how effectively they could crowdfund a book. It was never successfully deployed. Another author, Tom Cox, whose 2017 book, 21st Century Yokel, was Unbound's fastest title to be crowdfunded, said he was owed a 5-figure sum by the publisher. The article then goes on to discuss some of the successes that they've had. But a new article by the bookseller was published on May 30th, which is Sharma's statement saying that she's not paying anybody they owe money to. Authors published by the crowdfunding publisher Unbound will not receive historic royalty payments for the sales of their books unless Boundless, the new publisher founded following Unbound going into administration, survives and thrives, according to CEO Arkna Sharma. In an update email sent to authors, Sharma explained that due to the company's cash flow situation, Boundless would only be able to pay royalties accrued after the new publisher was financed in March 2025 until the company is on firmer financial footing. Suspicious. John Mitchinson, after this, resigned from the board. Sharma added that if Boundless is unable to operate and goes into liquidation, then no further payments at all, historic or current, will be possible, and all existing cash flow will go to the liquidator, and all future sources of cash will be turned off, adding all of your patience, the investor's new capital, and all senior management's uncompensated time will have been for naught. So one, I guess, plus is that she's claiming that upper management is not being paid while this is going on. Sharma added that she and the new investors have not received nor are they seeking any cash return, and Sharma's working for free, I guess. What gets me, an account that I have followed for years, Effin' Birds, if you've heard of them. They make these funny little bird comics, essentially. They're being affected by this. They posted, "For anyone catching up on the Unbound Boundless saga, they owe me the equivalent of a year's salary at my old job, and this morning let me know that I will not be paid ever. My US books were a sub-license from Unbound, so every dollar I earned on book sales for the last 18 months was sent to them to take a cut and then distribute to me, and they've paid none of it. It's gone. I reclaimed the rights about 6 months ago, and there will be no interruption in availability in US Canada. While this is painful, financially I'm not going to lose my house or starve, thanks to calendars, merchandise, and appearance income. There are other people out there for whom this is an absolute disaster, including a lot of employees of Inbound, so I guess I'm lucky. Anyway, a lot of 2027's comics are going to be about this." Which, that is so sad. That was one model disrupting the publishing chain, and they did have a good run of 15 years, but the next one is TikTok itself. The company that owns TikTok, ByteDance, started their own publisher in late 2023 to capitalize on the whole book talk trending thing. And so they've been taking in authors, and basically, very quietly, over the last few months, they have been working out how to return rights to people because they're apparently shuttering their doors. I haven't been able to find an actual statement from ByteDance, but authors who did sign with them have been posting that they're going through all these problems with royalties and getting their rights back, etc. Because that's one of the things that you need to be careful of. Essentially, when you sign with a publisher, You're generally signing a contract saying you have the rights to exclusively publish my book for XYZ amount of time. And if you're not, and a lot of people don't, like an indie author wouldn't know this if it's their first time publishing. So they could be signing away their book for eternity and then not be able to get it back. They would never be able to publish that book elsewhere. Like that's one of the things with Kindle Unlimited. You can't sell that ebook or even give it away anywhere outside of Amazon. So like that was going on with the Unbound Boundless and then now Eighth Note Press. Like these people are having to fight to get the rights back to their books so that they can still publish them somewhere. I just think this whole situation's crazy. And what a shame. Were you a Matthew and Paul fan before this went down? Let me know in the comments below. I'm joking. You know, I loved their content. I loved Mr. Maples. And like the little pranks are so cute. But this just really soured me on them. But yep, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.